Tree appraisal, the trunk formula method, valuing the irreplaceable. In our last episode, we talked about the cost approach and the concept of substitution, buying a new tree from a nursery to replace a lost one. But what happens when you can't buy a substitute? What happens when the tree in question is a 40-inch diameter bur oak that has stood for 2 centuries? You can't call up a local nursery and ask for a quote on a 200-year-old oak. In the eyes of the market, that tree is irreplaceable by direct means. This is where we move from simple arithmetic into the heavy lifting of the trunk formula method, or TFM. Today, we're going to break down the logic of the TFM, explore the critical 2024 updates regarding direct cost comparisons, and discuss the 2025 guidelines on when this formula actually applies and when it doesn't. If you're studying for the TPAC, the trunk formula method is likely the part of the exam that makes your palms sweat. But the logic is actually quite elegant. The TFM is an extrapolation. We take the cost of the largest commonly available nursery tree, the L-cant we discussed in episode 6, and we use it to establish a unit cost per square inch of trunk area. We then apply that unit cost to the much larger trunk area of our subject tree. Essentially, we are saying, if an inch of a nursery tree costs X, then an inch of this giant heritage tree should also cost X. But we don't stop there. If we just multiplied the size by the price, we'd end up with astronomical numbers that no court would ever accept. That's why we apply depreciation. We take that basic price and we knock it down based on 3 factors we've already discussed: condition, site, and contribution. If the tree is in poor health, or if it's located in a back alley instead of a front yard, the value drops. The TFM is a balancing act between the physical size of the asset and its functional reality. This is a vital update for any modern appraiser. For a long time, there's been a critique that the trunk formula method produces values that are disconnected from reality. Critics argue that the formula can sometimes produce a value of $80,000 for a tree that a specialized contractor could actually replace with a massive spade for only $30,000. The 2024 update challenges us to perform a sanity check. It suggests that if a tree can be moved, even if it's much larger than the L-cant, the direct cost of moving that tree should act as a ceiling for the value. If the trunk formula says a tree is worth $100,000, but a tree spade operator can move a similar tree for $50,000, the credible value is $50,000. Why? Because of that principle of substitution we talked about. A rational buyer wouldn't pay $100,000 for a tree they could replace for half that price. As a TPAC candidate, you must be able to compare your TFM results against real-world direct cost estimates. But wait, it gets even more nuanced. TFM isn't a one-size-fits-all tool. There are times when you should not use the trunk formula. For example, if you're appraising a tree in a dense forest or a timber stand, the TFM is inappropriate. You should be using forestry stumpage values instead. If the tree is a weed species or an invasive, like a tree of heaven, applying the trunk formula might result in a high dollar value for a plant that actually has a negative impact on the property. In those cases, your species rating in the formula should be 0 or near 0. The 2025 update emphasizes that the appraiser's judgment is more important than the calculator. You have to ask, does this number make sense in the context of the whole property? If a house is worth $300,000 and your trunk formula says a single tree in the backyard is worth $250,000, you probably have a problem with your site or contribution ratings. Let's talk about the basic price calculation, which is the heart of the TFM. To get this right, you need 2 things. The unit cost, which is the price of the L-cant divided by its trunk area. The appraisal trunk area of your big tree. Here is where episode 4 comes back to haunt you. If you measured the DBH incorrectly, or if you didn't account for a multi-stemmed trunk properly, your area will be wrong. And since the TFM is multiplicative, a small error at the start leads to a massive error at the end. The 10th edition simplified this by using the trunk area index for very large trees to account for the fact that, as trees get older, they don't necessarily increase in value at a perfectly linear rate. It's a way of shaving the value down to keep it within the realm of economic reality. For your exam, be prepared to show your work. The TPAC graders aren't just looking for the final dollar amount. They are looking at your logic chain. Did you select the correct L-cant? Did you calculate the unit cost correctly? Are your depreciation percentages, condition, site, contribution, supported by the notes in your field observations? If you show a 40% reduction for condition, you better have a note saying significant heart rot or major dieback in the upper third of the canopy. The trunk formula method is where the arborist becomes a true consultant. It's where we quantify the unquantifiable. It's a powerful tool, but as the 2024 and 2025 updates remind us, it must be wielded with a deep understanding of the market and a heavy dose of common sense. In our final episode, we're going to take all these numbers and head to the one place where they matter most, the courtroom. The expert in the courtroom. We'll talk about defending your appraisal, avoiding bias, and the do's and don'ts of being an expert witness. If you're struggling with the TFM math, practice filling out the TFM worksheets until the logic feels like second nature. Until next time, Keep your formulas tight and your logic even tighter. You've been listening to the Arborist-podcast. Our goal is to grow our collective knowledge, one domain at a time. If you enjoyed the podcast, please like, share, and subscribe to help us keep this momentum.